All right, well, here we are, Wednesday evening, and find ourselves in some pretty interesting times. Challenges arising to people all over the world. And what a gift it is that we have something we can rely upon, the Dharma. Medicine. And this application of this medicine, that we can be ready to cultivate our highest potentials here in this very lifetime, regardless of what's going on. As a matter of fact, even more so in challenging times. Can't measure how grateful I am to have found this path and to have the opportunity to engage in this rare and precious life in ways that are helpful to others. And that's what we all get to do, and that's our topic today, is cultivating bodhicitta. We are in the three principal aspects of the path, and we've unpacked that first one of renunciation. We've engaged in a conversation and unpacking of the second one, bodhicitta, and that's where we are today. And for those of you, there's some new names on there. This text, it's one of the, I think it is the shortest Lam Rim text, where it just, here's what you need for the path of awakening. So text you can download on our website. And 14 verses that just provide real clarity around this is what we need for awakening. And the first is renunciation. Renunciation is the renunciation of the delusional way of being. It's not that I need to, go to a cave and eat rice, though that may sound pretty appealing. It's not that I'm a renunciant in the ways of having to go without. What I'm renouncing is my misperceptions. What I'm renouncing is my confusion. What I'm renouncing is grasping to myself and the world in ways that are not in accordance with reality, which is foundationally the source of samsara. It's the source of all our mental and emotional suffering. And it's easier said than done. We can read books and have keen conversations, understanding that, wow, a lot of my mental emotional suffering has nothing to do with the event. It's how I'm perceiving it. It's what I'm fearing about. It's what I'm grasping to. I can have a real deep conversation around understanding that I really don't know what the future will bring, but my mind's going to go ahead and plan it anyway. I can recognize that a lot of this doesn't make sense if I'm logical and reasonable. But my mind will go right to my worries, fears, and my habits and these tendencies that arise, and then me starting to see people in particular ways, blame people for things, get angry about things, and get worked up about things without really examining and understanding that all of that is fundamentally coming from something that's not true. And if we can see it's not true, well, I'm not going to get so worked up about it. Why would I get worked up about that? If I understand the laws of cause and effect, if I understand that there's a cause that gives rise to my fear, there's a cause that gives rise to my grasping and clinging, there's a cause that gives rise to me blaming and so forth. And the cause isn't out there. Out there are conditions that trigger these causes. And these causes, or mental and emotional causes, are always of the same nature. So the cause for something mental, like a thought or mental activity, well, causes are mental. emotions, mental and emotional states. Those causes are here, not there. They have something to do with out there. It's, if I'm abused as a child, I'm traumatized, that's going to have an impact. So there's a relationship that's going on, and a relationship with my experiences and how I'm perceiving and responding to them, and what are the seeds that have been cultivated, as I protect myself from a harmful action that happened to me a long time ago. Then I now have habits and patterns, and left unattended, I'm going to be creating these same habits and patterns even when I'm not in a traumatized state. So if we start to understand this dynamic between the events in our lives and the way we interact with them, the interdependence of them, the fact that if I'm hurt or abused in some way, that's not my fault. I didn't create the cause for someone else to do that to me. And I am going to have an impact. And it's an interdependent event. There had to be the person with the action, there had to be the victim, there had to be all the causes and conditions that gave rise to this person and myself. There had to be my parents and my parents before those parents, and there had to be the environments and the cities that were grown in. There had to be the hospital built that I was born in. All of these things have given rise for these events to happen, and they didn't happen just to me. I'm one spot in this myriad of interdependent arisings that are happening all the time right now. And then we're creating the causes for future events. So if I start to understand this, then I can start to work with creating causes and conditions that give rise to less suffering. And I stop, reifying, making real these thoughts and ideas and stories and blame, and start cultivating a very simple truth that I'm creating my future right now. How I respond to these events in my life is creating the imprints of my future experiences. I don't have control over the events, but I do start to have some control over how I experience them. They can sting less, or they can sting more. And the habits, the thoughts, and the tendencies that I water and nurture, well, that's going to be how I experience things. It's going to condition myself for that. So there's this quote, and it goes to unknown, but I really think it illustrates this point. And I think that's really a core of what I would love to share for this evening. So it's unknown as the author. And I've heard this and similar ones before by others. The thought, here I'll bring it up so I can look at you a little more. The thought manifests as the word. The thought manifests as the word. The word manifests as the deed. The deed develops into habit, and habit hardens into character. So watch the thought and its ways with care, and let it spring from love, born out of concern for all beings. This points to something very important for our experience. And that is that the thoughts that I nurture and the thoughts I'm unaware of shape who I am and my experience of things. From my thoughts come actions. From my thoughts come habits and tendencies that bind me to act or react in a certain way. And to a large degree, most of our thoughts are unknown. That I find pretty fascinating. there's mental activity. Those of us who meditated a little earlier, you may have meditated a little earlier. We sat down, and you may have noticed your mind had some activity. What's going on? Well, that's going on all the time. And then we may have been on the breath, and then we may have noticed that we're wandering off. Our mind was somewhere else, tending to something else. Oh, yeah, here's my mind. It's over here. Well, whatever happened between the time I was focused on my breath and the time that I noticed I wasn't, that I was thinking about something else, there's a whole lot of time there. That time is in unawareness. At some point, my mind stopped becoming aware of the breath and started in movement around some other things. At some point, my attention became aware that my thought's not here anymore. My mind has wandered. That's unawareness. We're not aware of when we left the breath. We're not aware of what happened between that awareness of breath and my awareness that my mind has wandered. Imagine what that is like during the day. How many thoughts, how much has gone on in our mind throughout the day that we're unaware of. And we catch ourselves ruminating, planning, projecting. And before I know it, my mind's down the road. I'm in the worst story of my life. I'm overwhelmed. And then that's been going on. And now I'm in a state that's fearful or overwhelmed or reactive or blaming. Boy, if those people were different, we'd be all right. Yeah. And then there's a thought I water. And then I water it more because I call my friends and tell them, well, those people are like that, and that's why they're doing this. And then I water these thoughts. And out of those thoughts come my deeds, my actions. And those eventually develop my character, my way of being. And ultimately the way I start to see the world, because I start labeling people, things, and events in particular ways. And when I see them, I don't like them. I do like them. They're funny. They're an idiot. They're a jerk. And if only it was different, we'd all be off in a better place. And as if I actually know how the world should be. And yet I might say with firm conviction, here's how it ought to be. And I don't even know what will come from our current times. I have no idea what potentials may arise. I have no idea how this will evolve our humanity. I have no idea what new resources may come out of this. I have no idea how many may die. I have no idea if my loved ones may die. I do know many will. I do know that many will need our help. And I do know that we will need to be strong and resilient so that we can truly help others. And in order to be strong and resilient, my little quote went away. In order to be strong and resilient, we need to attend to the thoughts that arise in our mind streams. We need to be mindful, nurturing the thoughts that arise out of love, out of kindness and care and compassion. Thoughts that remind us of our inner strength and resiliency. Thoughts of our ultimate nature, not the thoughts that say, I am afraid. Thoughts that recognize I'm experiencing fear. These are different thoughts. In order for us to really be bodhisattvas today, to cultivate this path of awakening, to rise to these challenges, to not just rise to them, but thrive in them. And by thrive in them doesn't mean I'm not fearful, overwhelmed, scared. It means that I'm aware that I'm fearful, overwhelmed, and scared, and that these are opportunities for me to cultivate my highest potentials. in this path of awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. And that even though I'm uncomfortable, I'm overwhelmed, I'm showing up anyway. As Venerable Tenzin Priyadarshi stated, I just love the way he put it, fearlessness does not mean an absence of fear. It means an awareness of my fear and not succumbing to that fear, just experiencing it and then doing my best anyway. So in these times where we are cultivating this path of awakening, where we are starting to understand renunciation and understand that my mental and emotional suffering, so much of it has to do not with the event itself, but with how I'm attending to the event. How many of us are overwhelmed today fearing about what may happen tomorrow? But it's pretty normal, isn't it? It's pretty normal to not be able to fully participate and be grateful for the life we actually have in this moment, out of fear that we won't have it like this in future moments. That's a thought. And then that's a thought that gives rise to grasping and fear. That's a thought that gives rise to the hardening of samsara. And that's a thought that robs us of the opportunity to be present in our own lives. We really need, in times like this, to be aware of our thoughts, to be mindful. To be mindful is to be aware of the thoughts that arise, to be aware of my exaggerations, to be aware of my feelings as they arise, and to be aware that I'm experiencing them. They are not who I am. Temporary, as is this day. This is renunciation, is understanding that delusional way of engaging in the world that creates samsara. I'm renouncing that way of being. I'm renouncing my perception of reality in this way, my confused perception, my grasping. And I want to renounce that way of seeing the world that creates my prison, that creates suffering for myself and others, because then not only am I not happy, you know what I'm doing? I'm looking at who's creating my unhappiness. I'm blaming. And who am I to blame for my unhappiness? It's pretty fascinating if I blame it on that person. That person made me unhappy. They treated me pretty poorly. Well, that happiness or unhappiness or suffering or whatever it is we're experiencing in the moment had a lot to do with all my other moments. And am I blaming my mom for my unhappiness? Because this person treated me this way, but I wouldn't even exist if my mom wasn't there. Some people blame their parents for a lot of their unhappiness. I don't know if you've ever noticed that. There's this saying that goes around. A lot of people say it. Find it fascinating when talking about parents, especially moms. They'll say, yeah, they know how to push my buttons because they installed them. Did they install those buttons? Is that true? It's a cute saying, but I'm pretty sure they didn't install your buttons. I think they gave birth to you. I think they had some part in raising you. But our buttons were not installed by anyone. They are an interdependent experience of my relationship with my parents and with all other beings, whether I fell down the stairs when I was young or whatnot, or all of this collective experience, and from a Buddhist perspective, from the life before this mother. But we might blame our mom for something. Yeah, I have intimacy issues because my mom didn't teach me how to be intimate. But I don't blame her for all the joy I have in my life. I don't blame her for, the fact I can walk and talk, read, write, and all that, which, obviously, if I'm going to blame her for this one little thing, maybe I should blame her for all those other good things. Sometimes we have parents that were not able to love us very much. And it's not their fault. You may find that they've had lives that didn't allow them to be loved very much. So this is my way of pointing out the delusional way of thinking that we make real. I'm trying to get to that quotes. Getting there. Kind of scroll a lot. Went away. We're getting close. But these thoughts become real, and we reify them, and we tell others about them, and then they confirm them, and then we say something like, yeah, my mom knows how to push my buttons because she installed them, and I believe them to be true. And my friend says, oh, that's good. And then I use that line, and then we all start using that line, and then it makes its way into modern psychology. And we think that's the way things are. It's pretty interesting. The thought manifests as the word. So we have these thoughts, and these thoughts, some are aware of, some are not. And then, the word, we speak, we say things. Those things that we share came from thought. The word manifests as a deed. Now I'm doing things. Once I've said something, I'm doing something. Something's in action. And sometimes I physically do things. The deed develops into habit. Okay, this becomes very habitual, the way I start thinking and the things I say. And, I get my favorite lines and my favorite things to blame. And then the habit hardens into character. So watch the thought in its ways with care, and let it spring from love, born out of a concern for all beings. And this is a critical piece. Anything that we do that's motivated out of love and the care for other sentient beings, that's born out of compassion or loving kindness, is virtuous. It is creating the conditions for awakening. It's that simple. This is just right intention, right out of the Eightfold Noble Path. If my intention arises from renunciation, loving kindness, compassion, harmlessness, goodwill, then whatever happens is going to be virtuous and create the conditions that give rise to awakening and no more suffering. That we talked about this last week. All suffering comes from non-virtuous activities. All happiness comes from virtuous activities. So what are the thoughts we're having right now? What are the fears that arise as we find ourselves in challenging times? But what are the thoughts behind the fears? Not the thoughts that arise from the fear, but what are the underlying ones? Is there a sense of clinging and grasping? Is there a sense of a self, in my case, a John, that is not going to get what he wants or the way he thinks the world should be? Is there some sense of grasping that the world should go the way I would like it to go for my benefit? Is there some misperception that I'm the center of the universe and not an interdependent part of a much bigger thing that's happening constantly? Is there a sense that I am a particular independent being Or is there the wisdom of an understanding that I'm an interdependent being that is changing moment to moment, aware moment to moment, and new thoughts, fears, feelings, excitements come moment to moment, that I'm a stream of consciousness giving rise moment to moment based on what I'm experiencing moment to moment. And I'm not the same person I was yesterday, nor will I be the same as I am tomorrow. And I really don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't even know who's going to call me. I don't know how things will be different. Many of us had no idea our lives would be like this 2 months ago. We also don't know what it'll be like 2 months from now. And we also don't know what resiliency, what kindness and compassion will grow from this. But the mind will have some opportunities to project. So in times like this, we have Dharma, we have the truth, we have the tools, we have the practices. The practices that allow us to come back to reality. The reality of this moment, and be in this moment with clarity and understanding. Understanding this is a moment that will never come again in my life, that all of these moments are opportunities to cultivate my highest potentials, path of awakening, be of benefit to all sentient beings, regardless of whether I lose my home or not, whether I break my leg or not, whether I wind up in a hospital or not. It's not the events themselves, it's messy for everyone. But all of these events, all of them, are opportunities to improve ourselves, to cultivate the path, and to improve the world that we live in. And in this moment, where is the problem for me in this moment? Sometimes there is one. Often there isn't. My mental and emotional suffering, robbing me of the presence of this moment, is worrying about a future moment or ruminating on a past moment. How if they had only done this, as if I know what would have happened. So the mind is spending a lot of time in places that don't exist anywhere but my mind. And those thoughts give rise to fear, insecurity, blame, resentment, overwhelm. But right now, I may not be so overwhelmed if I realize that just sitting in a Dharma teaching, the path of awakening with many others, cultivating their highest potentials, ready to be of service and to improve the world that we live in this moment. And here's what we can rely upon. That if my thoughts spring from love born out of concern for all beings, then no matter what happens, I am cultivating the real essence of this lifetime. That's what's going to matter. When my body comes and goes, what's going to matter is how I've lived my life. What's going to matter is the karmic imprints I've created, the habits, the character that have become my way of being is what will continue. Not all the other stuff I'm worried about today. So focusing my attention, being mindful of these thoughts that either give rise to a path of awakening or samsara and continual torment is critical in these times, not just for ourselves, but for all those others that need our help. We can cut right through an incredible amount of overwhelmed mental and emotional suffering starting to live more in accordance with reality, actually living and being present with the way things are in this moment. And this takes effort, so that's why we're here. It takes a little effort. It means we need to train our minds. It means that we need to learn to have a stable present mind, and so that takes time. One of the most valuable things we can do right now in times where we might feel overwhelmed and worried and fearful and caught up in uncertainty is to meditate, to develop a practice of meditation, a simple one like we just did when we started, bringing my attention back to the breath. The breath is only here in the present moment. And that each breath is a breath of becoming. So something where we, in these times, make sure that we make some time to be present. And then getting to these thoughts, start becoming aware of the thoughts that I want to dominate my life. What are the thoughts I'd like to grow and nourish in my life? We can start consciously putting thoughts in our minds that become our deed, our habit, and our character. So not just dependent on the thoughts that are arising, I can actually start putting the thoughts in. That's the 4 measurable attitudes. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings were to abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, anger. May they abide in this way. I shall cause them to abide this way. Loving kindness, compassion, empathetic joy. These 4 measurable thoughts, I can be reciting that. We've been doing a loving kindness practice every day, 12:30 our time, Monday through Friday, where we cultivate the loving kindness within ourselves, peace, ease, health, well-being, and we offer it to all sentient beings. I can be doing that on purpose. And then when I'm not in that practice, I can be doing something like that. Mantras mean mind protection, protecting my mind from those unhealthy thoughts. I've been practicing the medicine Buddha mantra a lot. So instead of letting my mind go to news or other things, just playing. I actually have a little tune, the medicine Buddha mantra. I think we have it on our website. Yeah. And you can just, I put that in the background. I catch myself saying it as I'm walking down the street. I'm saying the medicine Buddha mantra for all sentient beings. I'm bringing to mind those people I know that need some help and healing. And now my mind's in a productive way, and those become habits, and those become a more natural way of who I am and how I'm experiencing this very precious life that I have, and that I have available to me if I'm mindful, and if I make the effort to start consciously putting the healthy, nurturing, realistic thoughts into my mind. That we've done renunciation. We're in the Bodhicitta, understanding that as we suffer, others suffer, and that we are, in order for us to really open our hearts and fully engage in this path, we need to recognize the interdependence we have with others and allow that bodhicitta motivation. This becomes the fuel for awakening. And I'm not just in this for me. I'm in this for all sentient beings, because I can't stand that suffering as well. Okay, so we do now have a speaker system in case somebody has a question or a comment. Or a thought, which is what we're thinking about. Oh, it looks pretty quiet there. So just coming back to the 8th verse. Unrelentingly tormented by the 3 types of suffering, life after life in limitless compulsive existence. Having thought about the condition of your mothers who have found themselves in situations like these develop supreme Bodhicitta aim. So this is this understanding that I'm suffering from the three types of suffering, which are born out of my confusion and grasping, not out of the events so much. And I'm stuck in this life after life because I keep compulsively being, the compulsion, being forced to act and do things in certain ways karmically as this inertia. And having thought about the conditions of everyone else, it says my mother's, everyone else is my mother, who have found themselves in situations who have suffered like me, then we develop this aspiration that I can't stand to see them suffer either. Okay, it looks like we had a chat pop up here. Do you have a good mantra for shame? Yeah, shame is this really powerful experience. It's not, I did a bad thing, it's I'm a bad person. It's something I've worked with for a lot of years in my life. And they're not a specific mantra for shame, like it's self-directed at that. But shame is this root that I'm a bad person and unworthy and harmful. And so any mantra where we are bringing to mind these virtuous aspirations for others, one of the most common is Om Mani Padme Hum, which is the six-syllable mantra, the Buddha of compassion. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Each of those six is the antidote to the six realms of samsara. So a very powerful mantra that we can be saying and holding in our heart, seeing it just spin around our hearts. Om Mani Padme, Om Mani Padme, Om Mani Padme Hum. Really, with the idea that all beings can be free of suffering, big wish for their well-being, is a really powerful tool that will help when shame's going to come from a self-centered focus. And this is an other-centered focus, getting us out of ourselves and thinking of others. So it's a really beautiful antidote in that way. And the other thing to understand about healing shame is related to my past behavior. And I have done a lot of damage in my past behavior. In understanding that my past behavior does not need to remain a tragic event. That past behavior can become the condition for me to be helpful to others. It can be transformed by using the lessons learned and the pain felt of that time to inspire me to be different than I was. They call this a living amends. That the best way to make up for the past is to be a better human being today. And so a practice is to, when feelings from the past or what I had done, we recognize that at that point, that was the best I had. No one chooses in a given moment to act out in ways that they'll feel bad about. At that moment, that's the best I had. But now, that has given rise to new moments, new lessons. And that once tragic event is now the ground from which I can help improve the world. So understanding that, and now bringing a mantra, a wish, a virtuous activity, a helpful action into the world is an opportunity to transform old shame into productive living. People say you can't change the past, but that does change the past. And then as we do it, our past gets longer. our past improves. So I hope you found that helpful. Oh, we're already up at the hour. Anyone else with a question? And you could actually raise your hand. I think we could get you on the speaker. Okay. It's an easy crowd today. So our lesson here today that I really want to keep coming back to is the thought manifests the word manifests the deed as the deed. The deed develops into habit, and the habit hardens into character. So watch the thought and its ways with care, and let it spring from love, born out of concern for all beings. This quote we'll post in our online community. I'll post that tonight. So those of you, if you haven't joined the online community, please do. It's free. You can just join. If you go to our website, this will pop up. Join our online community. You will find a lot of resources there. You'll find some really wonderful, a community of Dharma practitioners, but some really good practices and teachings. And Venerable Sumpton is making offerings there as well. And these recordings, of course, will be there as well. So join the community and you'll have access to all that. And I'll post this quote on there. I found it really meaningful in my life. The life I have today has a lot to do with me changing the thoughts that have given rise to the habits and the feelings and the tendencies. And so, and it's not just the thought. We actually have to put the thought into the deed and the habit, and then the change of being. So, for example, mantras are a good activity. Waking up every day, setting our bodhisattva motivation, doing some practice, training our mind to be more attentive. This is a long-term strategy, not an overnight thing. There are some things we can do rather quickly that will help in the immediate, such as mantras. But we also want to establish a solid practice. So let us dedicate the merit and the wisdom we have accumulated here today and throughout our lifetimes. And we dedicate this for the benefit of all sentient beings. May all sentient beings be free of suffering. May they find their liberation. May we be able to use the wisdom and merit accumulated here today and throughout our lifetimes to purify our own minds, to cut through our delusions, to help us cultivate this bodhicitta, that we may truly be a benefit to all sentient beings. May we also dedicate the merit and wisdom accumulated here today and throughout our lifetimes for the long life of all spiritual teachers of all spiritual traditions who are authentically teaching the path of awakening. May they live long, may their teachings flourish.